Graham Matthews, Bleacher Report, FanSided, Daily DDT. My man, how you doing?
Doing great, Randy. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Can't complain. I got you on the show today, the Basement Show, for a very special episode. 25th anniversary for WCW Monday Nitro debuting on TNT. So we want to go back in the archives, September 4th, 1995, before you were around.
I mean, I was around, but literally I was like 3 months old.
3 months old. So you were born in what month?
June of 95.
June of 95. So yep. Nitro debuts 3 months after you were born.
I'm still shit in diapers at this point. Yep.
I'm like 12 years old. Yeah, I'm old, man. I'm old.
Well, I'm thinking like you tuned in live though, right?
I tuned in live on TNT. Raw was going on at the time on USA.
Yep.
So just for me, when I hear 25 years that Nitro debuted, I'm like, holy shit! Like, I know, you did a show 5 years ago for the 20th anniversary, and now 25 years, and like, so much shit has happened. The whole landscape has changed since then. I guess I'll first ask you this: when did you first see Nitro at all? Like, I know you probably saw it probably on a replay or some shit like that. So what's your first memory of Monday Nitro?
Oh man. Probably I own the Rise and Fall of WCW 3-disc set they put out, God, right. I don't know, 10 years ago, I think. We're talking on the 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
We talked on the 20th anniversary, the 15-year anniversary, which would have been 2010. I'm pretty positive that was the year, if not the year before, the WWE put out a DVD documenting the rise and fall of WCW. And the book is great, too. I think Brian Alvarez actually wrote it. I own a copy. I've read it before. I'm in the process of reading it again. The history of WCW just fascinates me, specifically those final few years of when it really, spiked and then it just, hit rock bottom. But my earliest memory of Nitro, although I've seen clips here and there on YouTube, on the 3-disc set itself, the thing with WWE is that, it's stuff that I wasn't around for. They'll always either acknowledge or show footage of on their shows. Before the network, we had almost zero way of reliving those time periods of Nitro history because they would never really acknowledge WCW aside from just shitting on it on the show occasionally, Right. So I know I had seen clips and whatnot. Honestly, I think maybe not fondest memory, but my biggest memory of Nitro might honestly be 5 years ago, which sounds odd, 20 years removed from the fact, but I actually went back and before we went live here, I asked you if this was actually the 25th anniversary. I know you would actually tell me previously over text. I just forgot because I remember on the exact anniversary of Nitro. So this must have been on September 4th, 2015, that I went back and rewatched that first episode of Nitro because they're all on the network now. Right. I had rewatched, I think maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes, and I was going to go back and watch the pay-per-views too. I just never found the time, but I did watch the first few episodes of Nitro itself. And those were the ones that were filmed from the Mall of America, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yep. Yeah. So it was a very obviously unique set. They got the Hogan fucking, the pasta commercials and shit for the Hogan pasta. It was wild. And then Luger, was that the episode that he first showed up on? Was the first episode of Nitro? I obviously should know this, but I don't know if it was that first episode or not.
Correct. Yeah.
We was on Raw and Nitro at the same time. Yeah. So I watched all that. And I enjoyed it. It was, obviously at that point it's an hour show, so it's a very quick watch. A lot like Raw when that show first premiered in '93. So that's probably my biggest memory of Nitro. I've seen other WCW pay-per-views and matches, clips here and there, but I had not watched a full episode of Nitro until just 5 years ago. And I think the cool thing with the network is that you can relive the entire history of Nitro if you wanted to, from '95 to 2001, which is cool.
I think for me, I did not know about WCW. Again, I'm 12 at the time. So I know prior to Nitro, they did have, Clash of Champions, and Flair was there, and Mick Foley and Vader and those guys. But I wasn't watching them like I was watching Raw and those guys. So I knew more about, McMahon and Raw and stuff like that. And when Nitro came on board, Luger comes there, he's not under contract with McMahon on that day. The day before he was. So the contract runs out for Luger the night before. So that the story is they had like some sort of handshake deal to renew the contract, or just some shit like that. And then Luger comes on Nitro the following day, and it's like, oh shit. You see Luger, you see Hogan, you see Sting in the ring, you see Flair. Yeah. It's like, and to me, that kicked off the whole war that we would see for the next 5-6 years. Not the war you see now with NXT and AEW, and of course many would say it's a war.
It ain't a war. They might even be. I know you've been kind of out of the loop for the last couple of weeks being on vacation in Florida, but there's actually talk of NXT moving off of Wednesdays onto Tuesdays because it's done vastly better unopposed. And Dynamite, same thing. They actually did 850,000 viewers on Tuesday. Right. Dynamite did like 950,000. So like there may not even be a war anymore beyond the next couple of weeks. Just to give you a perspective of how much of a war it really is, which it's not, but that's a different discussion for a different day.
So real quick sidebar. So you're saying NXT will go to Tuesday, AEW will stay on Wednesday, or a different day?
Yeah, no. Dynamite's definitely staying on Wednesdays. NXT would probably, I would like to see it on Thursdays. It doesn't really matter. I just don't want it right after Raw, but that's just me. Right. I think Tuesday's the popular choice just because it was on Tuesday this past week. That's how it spiked that big rating. And they're going to be on Tuesdays again next week. Yeah. So Thursdays, I guess, would make sense. But they know that there was an audience there on Tuesdays. Maybe the same audience would be there on a Thursday too. But I think they know that Tuesday works, which is why they would probably lean towards that.
So, at the time when you're watching Raw, it's catered to kids. They got occupational wrestlers. They got dumpster guys and IRS and those people.
Mantor.
Mantar and those guys are like, oh wow. So we go from Hogan, Warrior, Macho, Andre DiBiase to Mantar and the Berserker and those fucking guys. But still at that time, you still got Shawn, you got Brett, you got Taker, Diesel, and Razor. Those were the 5 main people for the company at that time. So now, again, a fan might want something different at that time. So when Nitro comes on board on TNT for an hour at that point, and they see a former superstar on their product, it's like, oh shit! Now you start making the consumer at home start flipping channels. Like, do I want to watch Raw? Do I watch Nitro? Hulk Hogan's the biggest star in that company prior. Now he goes to Nitro. Macho comes on board, and it's Piper, and everybody who you saw with McMahon prior is now in this company. So I think the initial impact, let's talk about the initial impact Nitro had from day one to compete with Raw. So how big was that to say to a fan, now I have more than one option to watch every Monday night?
Well, obviously it was unprecedented, and it wasn't a war early on until, I would say, obviously 96 when the NWO came around, and they stayed their ground on Tuesdays. Not on Tuesdays, I'm sorry, on Mondays against Raw. Were they airing opposite of each other, or was it like an hour difference, or do you know?
It might have been. I came from the time frame where Raw was on at 9 o'clock, so Nitro might have been on 8. It
probably was. So it was probably on a date. Raw was, I think, still an hour at 9 at that point. But anyway, so it wasn't really a war until like the following year when the NWO came around, and that's when things really started to heat up. But again, it was unprecedented. When was the last time prior to that? I assume there had been wrestling pay-per-views that had aired opposite of each other. WWE used to do that on purpose, where they would air their pay-per-views on the same Sundays, like a Starrcade or a Clash of Champions, to steer people away. The idea of competition wasn't unprecedented, but having a weekly television show that you could tune into for free, it was different than a pay-per-view, because a pay-per-view you pay for, and you're kind of paying for the show that you want to see most. That's a little different, and that's actually costing them money too. And in the moment, it's like, shit, if more people buy my pay-per-view than theirs, then they're kind of fucked. And that was kind of the case, I believe, with WCW for a long time there. But yeah, obviously, again, I didn't grow up in that era, so I'm not the best person to give an idea about this, when it comes to competition and stuff. But variety is key, and we've kind of had that obviously recently with NXT and Dynamite, which is cool. It's not remotely the same thing. It's a totally different landscape, as you mentioned.
Right.
And the funny thing is that TNA tried doing the same thing 15 years later in 2010 against Monday Night Raw. thinking that the same thing would happen, where they would get that buzz and more people would tune in. Maybe not get the same ratings as Raw, but somewhere near the same ratings. And it wasn't even fucking close after that first night. So they tried to kind of remodel. They kind of try to follow the Nitro model after like a show or two, and it just did not work. Nitro, not that the first episodes were like anything amazing, like holy shit, you need to check out the show. It was just something different. And again, I think it wasn't just the fact that Nitro was something different. It was also the fact that WWE was arguably worse than it's ever been. And I know people say that now, but maybe it's just the product of the times. I don't know. And again, I didn't watch during that point, so maybe if I did, I would be singing a different tune right now. But I just think the product was so fucking bad in '95. Like, we don't have professionals, you know, like dentists and trashmen on the show now. So I think it's better in that respect. And if I had a choice, I absolutely would watch anything but WWE at that point if I was a fan in '95. So I think it's a great. It turned into a great concept, and obviously, you know, helped Nitro in the long run, putting on the better show within a couple of years. Not even actually, less than a year, the NWO came around. So it was a very cool concept.
So I think in due time, WCW made McMahon and them change how the characters were presented. So you know, Bischoff wanted a more real effect using real names. You know, to be fair, they still had the Dungeon of Doom and the Glaciers and those kind of guys, those cartoony kind of characters.
Yeah,
but still,
and those were shit.
They eventually faded out. They brought the cruiserweights involved, so that was a big plus for them. And again, like if I'm McMahon in that '95 time frame, I think what was also key is the fact that, you know, WCW made McMahon have not a pay-per-view every couple of months. Now it's every month.
Yep.
So at some point it was like 7 to 8. Now you're going, you know, all year round. So like at the time it was only Mania, Survivor Series, Rumble, SummerSlam,
King of the
Ring, and then In Your House came, I think, at the tail end of '95. So
that actually came in mid '95 because we talked about the 25-year anniversary of that a couple of months ago.
Right. So May of '95, first In Your House.
Yep.
Then you see Bischoff doing Super Brawl and Starrcade and Fall Brawl every month now. So McMahon's like, all right, I got to do this shit every month. Yeah. So just changing that whole landscape for money and dollars. Maybe McMahon say, you know what, if I got to keep up with them, I got to do this shit every month.
Yep. Yeah, it really allowed them and forced them to raise the bar. Not only in terms, I wasn't even really thinking about that, but create more pay-per-views, put on better content, have better shows, and create more compelling characters. Because in '95, and we've discussed this before when we talked about, you know, In Your House and debut of that 25 years ago, they still had Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels wasn't a made main eventer yet by late '95. God, they had fucking Diesel on top. Taker wasn't really a main. I mean, he was a main eventer, but he wasn't going for the championship every month just because I guess he didn't need to. But I mean, it was really the well ran dry after those guys. Let's just put it that way. Stone Cold, that was pre Stone Cold. I mean, I think he was in the company as the ringmaster at that point, but he wasn't, you know, anyone notable. The Rock didn't come around to the following year. Triple H had just debuted. He was a nobody for the most part in '95. Yeah, so 95, it was really the bare bones of that product. And WCW had an advantage. And WWE wasn't completely, you know, they had some stars, but WCW had the people that you hadn't seen in a few years. What are they up to? What are they doing? The Randy Savages of the world. Ric Flair had never been, actually, no, he was in WWE. I'm sorry, by that point. He was in WWE in 90, 91, 92. Not 90, 91, 92, early 93. So it's like, all right, what's Ric Flair up to? Why did he go back to WCW? What's Hogan up to right now? And they were bringing in new people. The idea that Luger was appearing at both shows. What a great get for your first show. Right. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and compare for the full show here, but like on the first Dynamite, we got fucking Jack Swagger coming out in the main event. You know what I mean? Like we did get, I don't want to slight AEW because we got John Moxley on that first pay-per-view, which was great. Literally weeks after he left WWE. That's probably the closest thing that we've gotten to a Lex Luger type situation, not appearing on two different shows simultaneously, but in terms of seeing a guy go so quickly from one place to the other. He was in WWE one month, and he was in AEW within literally less than like 30 days. And that was amazing. That doesn't happen a lot, because nowadays you get the 90-day no compete clause, people quit, and like CM Punk, he was gone, never went anywhere. Like the Ambrose thing was huge, and I think that can I don't know who's a bigger star between Luger and Ambrose. I think it's definitely debatable, because Luger was a big star for a while there in '93, and Ambrose was never the guy in WWE, but he was a big enough name where I felt like it was kind of an equivalent, if not a bigger deal. But anyway, WWE, to kind of go off of what you said, really had to raise the bar, really had to step up their game after seeing what WCW is doing with Nitro, creating their own television show weekly, having notable names they can bring in that people can kind of tune in for, see what they're up to, and then get hooked on the rest of the product. Again, WCW wasn't killing it in '95. It really wasn't until '96.
Right.
They started to really put the wheels in motion. But these early shows were simply setting the stage for what was to come less than a year later.
And you mentioned '96, so that's where shit gets to really be popping. You know, Scott Hall comes on board. We know about the curtain call at the Garden, the last night that Razor and Diesel performed for the company at the Garden with Shawn and Triple H. They do the curtain call, and then like a week later, Scott Hall was on WCW Nitro, and it's like, listen, man, when I see that live, it's like, again, you could be flipping the channel, watching Raw, go back to Nitro, and see Scott Hall coming down the rampway aisle in the crowd, just interrupt the whole fucking match, comes in, the two guys performing. I still don't know who was wrestling at the time in the ring before Scott Hall kicked them out. So Scott does the promo. We know the promo, and it was like, yo, like, what the fuck was that? Like, was that real? Was that intentional? Is Scott Hall still with McMahon? Is this a fucking invasion? What's going on? Is he on the contract? And it made the fan really be at home. Like, is this real? Because the way they presented it was more like, oh shit, like this is something brand new. And then we go on and we get Kevin Nash. I think the following week, if I'm not mistaken, the following week Nash.
I think so, yeah.
Or maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks the most. And then, oh shit, now you got Razor and Diesel over there. What's going on? Like, and just the way they aired it, it was like they made it seem like they came from McMahon as an invasion to WCW because they were high profile coming up. And from that point on, even before the NWO gets formed, it's like, all right, now I got to watch Monday Night Show every single Monday night.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the show before that, again, I haven't seen every episode of Nitro, so I can't tell you. I think it was just a show that was really just starting to find its footing. It wasn't until that first Scott Hall appearance on Nitro that the show became must-see TV. That was one of the biggest turning points in wrestling history. That was really, we could talk about what was the dawn of the Attitude Era, what was the real sign that a war was coming. That was it. I think the 95 Nitro, Raw, both airing on Mondays was the beginning, but it didn't really heat up until 96 when you're like, all right, this went from being in another option of wrestling to watch to must-see TV. Like, is this real? What's going on? As you mentioned, Randy, which was, it was huge. How many times in wrestling history, and people always thought it was real, obviously, but like, how many times did people think, is this a storyline? Is this real? And this was around the dawn of the internet as well. So people are probably buzzing like, what the fuck's going on here?
Right.
And again, in reading the Death of WCW book just recently, and I may be mistaken here, I think there were some fan theories, and maybe you can back me up on this and whether this is true or not, that the third guy, I know Sting is obviously, that was an option. I think some people thought, because Hall and Nash had just come from WWE, that the third person was going to be Bret Hart because he had taken time off after WrestleMania. Maybe people thought he had left as well. Because again, people aren't really paying as much attention to like contract details as we do today. If someone gets released from WWE today or quits or whatever, or isn't coming back, we literally know within seconds. Like, we know like almost immediately, or even well beyond that of like, okay, we probably are figuring they're not going to re-sign. They're going to leave. I'm not sure how much of that was around in 96. I'm assuming very, very, it was a very minimal portion of the audience that knew that Hall and Nash had actually left WWE. And they were, again, I've shat on, Diesel's title reign before and how bad it was for the year-long reign that it ended.
Yeah, you have. You have.
I have
yes,
quite a few times. But he was still a big star. He had just come from the opposition. He was champion for a year. He was involved in one of the fucking title matches of WrestleMania. Or no, I'm sorry, he wasn't. That was the year that he faced Taker. I'm thinking of 95. But he faced Taker WrestleMania. Hall was obviously still a big name as well. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal. And again, they played it off as if it was real, to the point where WWE, I think, actually sent Hall and Nash a cease and desist to stop portraying their WWE characters. Because WCW is trying to play it off as, oh, look, it's Razor Ramon and Diesel, when it obviously was Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, their real names, as you mentioned. And there's been a lot of talk over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Oh, is this the reality era of WWE? Blah, blah, blah. The reality era started in 96 with that shit. Because that was really when they started to merge reality with storyline, and it made for some of the best wrestling TV you will see in any company ever. And it led to that one of the most anticipated pay-per-views of all time at Bash at the Beach in 96.
And you get the Bash at the Beach. We know the Hogan heel turn. To go back to your point about whether Bret Hart could have been the third guy.
Yep.
We know about Sting could have been a possibility if Hogan
for sure
backed out.
Yeah.
Bret Hart, I might have heard that because you mentioned Bret Hart did take the hiatus after WrestleMania 12, and he was having talks with Bischoff and then even prior to when he signed over there. So could that have been like how impactful that would have been? Like Hall and Nash, and then Bret Hart comes out like, oh shit, Bret Hart. But yeah, I feel like, and I love Bret, and I love Sting, but if you really want to make that impact, that holy shit, what the fuck is that? And you bring out Hulk Hogan, and everybody thinking he's going to help Sting and help Luger and help Macho, and he turns on him, leg drop. The rest is history, and you just create possibly the biggest faction ever known to man in the sport. And I think that impact of it being Hogan, the biggest star in wrestling at that time, is like yo. Like, y'all turn Hogan a bad guy? Like, how's that going to work? I'm intrigued. I'm interested. I'm watching every Monday night from now. I got to see how they're going to do this. And they put the black, beard paint. He's dressed in all black. NWO, the word order. And the story goes on from there. But I think the Nitro success in 96, 7, and 8 does not really go far if they don't make the move to turn Hogan a bad guy at Bash at the Beach.
You got to make bold decisions. You have to. And I think we're seeing that now. Not that it's the same thing by any means, but we were talking before we went live here with Roman Reigns going heel, aligning with Paul Heyman. You got to make bold moves in desperate times. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Right. That's a desperate measure. But it's not a swerve for the sake of a swerve. It's not like, let's just turn Hogan heel just to shock people. Like, they genuinely thought it would be a good idea. And, of course, Hogan was against it. He had been a babyface for so long. He's made stories before, like, oh, I was going to turn on the Warrior at 6. I don't know. I mean, you got to take anything that Hogan says with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Would it have worked 6 years earlier in WWE? It might have. I'm not going to say that it wouldn't have. It might have. But I think but it wasn't, I don't know. I just don't think that would have worked just because Warrior didn't end up becoming the face of the company that they hoped that he would. So they actually ended up having to go back to Hogan. So had Hogan gone heel in 1990, he probably would have gone back to being a babyface by early 91. So I think the Hogan heel turn ended up working out for the best. And, of course, the later years of the NWO were complete fucking trash. It just got watered down over the course of a couple months, years, whatever. But in that moment, in the immediate aftermath of Hogan going heel, it was huge. And it didn't lead to immediate success for WCW. It was a gradual thing. It wasn't like they were immediately beating Raw in the ratings every week from that point forward. As far as I know, as far as I can remember anyway. But it was a gradual process. Like, okay, let's get more people intrigued here as to what we're going to do with this. How are you going to capitalize off of this? That, to me, and I say this constantly, it's all about the fucking aftermath. I mean, literally, WWE did something similar 5 years later with Stone Cold Steve Austin in the main event of WrestleMania 17. Did that have the same effect? No, and not only that, it had the opposite effect. It drove people away. Because that's exactly what they didn't want to see in WWE. Heel Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he played the role well, and he was a great heel, had a pretty good WWE title run. But that was like the end of people like, all right, I just don't want to see this. The Hogan heel turn was so perfect. It was the perfect storm of a few things. The Hall and Nash thing with them coming into the company. WCW finally starting to kind of build momentum as a genuine threat to WWE. And Hogan just being that guy. People genuinely already hated Hogan. Not everyone was booing the guy, but for literally years, you go back to the 1992 Royal Rumble. I think they dub over it on the Royal Rumble replay on the WWE Network. But people were cheering when Hogan got eliminated from the Rumble by Lex Luger. Not Lex Luger.
Sid, right?
Sid Justice. Sid. Yeah, Sid Vicious. Psycho Sid, whatever. So, yeah, anyway, that's essentially what happened, and I think it was perfect. People were ready. It's like, again, had they turned Roman heel 5 years ago, and wrestling is not the same now in 2015, 2020 as it was 20 years ago. But if it was, that's what the equivalent would be, because it's like, holy fuck, they're finally doing this, and it's cool. They're capitalizing off of it. The Bret Hart thing was never an actual option. I don't even think he would have been a free agent until later on in '96. And yeah, he was definitely having talks with WCW. He was, feeling them out to see what kind of deal they would offer him. I mean, there was literally no way that he was going to make it for that pay-per-view. It's just a matter of timing wasn't going to work. I'm just saying in terms of fan theories, I think people may have thought, okay, he's not here right now. So maybe that means he might be going to WCW, which is a genuinely, decent thought. It just, if you read more into it and you find out when his contract was going to expire and whatever, it probably wasn't going to work. But at any rate, though, Hogan was the perfect person. Again, Hart would have been a cool surprise. We found out a year later that he was a great heel in WWE when he went heel in early '97.
Right.
But it wasn't the same as Hogan. Hogan was WCW, or was rather WWE for a lot longer than Bret Hart. Not a lot longer, but he was on top a lot longer in WWE. Longer than Bret Hart. So I think it was obviously the better choice, even if they did have the option to bring in Bret Hart. And the Hogan thing reinvented his career. It reinvented WCW. It reinvented wrestling for quite a while there in the late 90s.
So I know that there's many factors that played into McMahon changing the culture and the landscape of his company. If we had to pinpoint maybe one that stood out above the rest, so obviously Nitro was live every Monday. Yep. Raw was sometimes live and pre-taped. had a fucking dog show in USA, so they had to do it.
The Westminster Dog Show, yeah.
Oh boy, live every Monday. It felt more real. The realism of the characters, the cruiserweights, old performers going to Nitro. So if you had to say, pin down one reason that made McMahon say, you know what, I gotta change our whole thing up. What do you think that WCW did that made McMahon say, you know what, I'm changing the whole shit up right now?
I don't know if it was one thing so much as it was just a series of things from '96 from that point forward. The fact that WWE was taped and WCW was live was a big thing. I mean, that was huge, just because they could literally give away spoilers minutes before WWE did.
Remember that.
Expanding Nitro to 2 hours. I don't know if Nitro did it first or WWE. I think WWE did it first, but I'm not sure. I think Nitro did, but I would have to go back.
I think Nitro.
I think so too. And then that kind of gave them the idea. And then obviously Nitro became a 3-hour show, and WWE stayed a 2-hour show, but they're a 3-hour show now and have been for 8 fucking years. So that gave them the idea, okay, maybe we can make this work, even though it hasn't. But they're making more money off of it. That was more of a network decision than a WWE decision, but they went along with it, so whatever. That having a second show with Thunder was around long before SmackDown. Not long before, but SmackDown came around in early '99 after the creation of Thunder.
Right.
Would we have had SmackDown without Thunder? Probably not. Because why else would you go for 7 years without having a second television show? Fucking AEW's been on for a year. They already have a second TV show. Not dark, but like they're already in talks of developing a second show. WWE, I know this is a different time, but why wouldn't they have had a second show by that point had it not been for Thunder? So I think that was a big part of it as well. Keeping their talent, building new talent. You can't rely on the same people for years and years. They had to create new talent. They lost all the names that they had been relying on for a long time. The Macho Man Randy Savages of the world, the Hulk Hogans, the Halls, the Nashes, the Razors, Diesels, whatever. They had to build new stars, Lex Luger. So that forced them to create new stars. Not for the first time, because Hogan wasn't, I mean, he was the WWE guy, but the character was kind of created in AWA. I think Vern Gagne's territory before he came over to WWE. But beyond that, though, they had to create new stars, and Stone Cold, Rock, and Stone Cold was previously in WCW. They didn't really do jack shit with him, so it's not like, oh, he was a WCW guy. He wasn't a WCW guy. Or, I mean, again, he kind of built momentum in ECW, but WWE was really, they were the company that took what they had with that character and made it into the superstar that Stone Cold ended up becoming. Triple H was another guy that was doing jack shit in WCW. He was brought over before any of this even happened and became a superstar. They had The Undertaker still. Kane, they debuted a couple of years earlier, but they really made him into a star as Kane. So I think, again, I don't know if it was one thing. I think the NWO is obviously the turning point for Nitro, for WCW, that kind of made them look at themselves like, fuck, like our product is inferior to WCW in several ways. And they also have bigger stars. When you have the momentum, the right creative doesn't always mean, oh my God, they're going to have become the better show. Like they're going to become the A company in the world. I mean, you look at AEW, their shows arguably are better than WWE's more often than not. Are they the wrestling company right now? No, they're not by a long shot. I mean, they just got started. And that's because it's going to take a while for them to build that momentum. And it's a different time. I mean, TV works a lot differently now than it did 25 years ago. But yeah, just everything seemed to fall into place for them. So I think it was the ratings that really scared them to create new stars, expand their programming, which in ways can be good. Other ways it might be seen as overexposure, as it is now, because they have way too many fucking shows now. But and again, it's cool to have good wrestling, but you know, when it becomes too much, people aren't going to watch fucking Main Event on Hulu and shit like that, you know. So yeah, I think it was just a variety of things, to be honest with you, just a number of different things that really made WWE look at themselves, specifically Vince, and say, "Fuck, like our product, we got away with it for so long because we had no competition. Why would we need to change?" That's literally how it is like today. We have no competition, so why would we need to change? But they are changing. They're bringing in more people. They're signing people to bigger deals because they don't want them to leave, which I think is smart for the bigger stars. Maybe not for a Mojo Rawley or Jinder Mahal, who they fucking pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to for literally no reason. That's a different story. But yeah, I think WCW, had it not been for WCW, WWE would have gone out of business. I mean, the ratings were in the fucking shitter. I mean, they're in the shitter now, but like, it was a different story back in '95. They could have very easily gone out of business had WCW not sparked them to do better.
True. I do recall, you know, watching Nitro at like 5 to 8. And then I get on, I hear Bischoff, all right, man, if you don't want to watch Raw, Big Boss Man beat this guy and Razor beat this guy and Goldust is the new Intercontinental Champion. All right, that was Raw. And then I'm like, I'm as a kid, like, so you need to tell me this shit is taped already? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I know who won, so if I already know who won,
wow,
why am I watching it?
Exactly, yeah.
So it's like little things like that. Like it just, the war was just so little petty. It was competitive and
it was petty like, shit. Yeah, 100%.
Way petty. Even like when Bret Hart left and Shawn was making fun of Bret, and you know they had this whole thing with Bret with the whole NWO in the ring, and you saw Rick Rude on fucking Nitro and Raw on the same night. Kind of lets you know Raw was taped at that fucking time.
Exactly.
Just, you know, little moments like that. I do recall.
I was going to say real quick, WWE did that all the time. It's not just a WCW thing. Like, oh, WCW is so petty, and they were, but like Vince is notoriously petty. I mean, you even go back further than that with like the Nacho Madness and the
Huckster.
The Huckster. Yeah. I mean, come on, dude. Like that shit, it was petty, but it also wasn't even entertaining. It was just fucking dumb. Like it was stupid. You know?
Billionaire Ted.
It's so dumb, dude. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, it goes both ways.
Real quick, I think some moments for me, I think the rivalry between Macho and DDP it was a very underrated rivalry that really sparked off on Nitro. NWO tried to recruit DDP, and they feel like they got to everybody. They got everybody in the whole group. But the one guy they wanted was DDP, and they felt like they could swerve him. And that one Nitro where they thought they had him, and he put the shirt on, and he's like, yeah. And he fucking turns around, he diamond cuts Scott Hall, he leaves the ring. I forgot what arena that was, but the whole crowd was going crazy. And that for me, as far as the favorite rivalry in the company in general, it would be DDP and Macho. Just that whole thing was just so surreal. I think the biggest moment they had was Goldberg. I think Goldberg was the biggest creation they had during this time frame. And you build them up, undefeated, U.S. champion. You can't beat him. He's like the new Stone Cold for WCW, and you put him in the ring against Hogan for the world title at the fucking Georgia Dome, 40,000 people. Many can argue, say, hey, that could have been on pay-per-view, but that's a different story for a different day.
Yeah.
And I know they were doing the ratings every Monday night, and they put these two guys in the ring. And I think that was July of 98. Goldberg's the new champion. Crowd goes crazy. And it's like, I think that was the peak of Nitro. I could be wrong, but I think that moment right there was the peak of Nitro with Goldberg and Hogan. And again, I saw it live, and I don't know what happened on Raw that night. I was tuned in. I know if you were around for that, you would have enjoyed it too. But I think the biggest moment for me in Nitro history was Goldberg and Hogan at the Georgia Dome.
You're probably right. That probably was the peak. And again, I'm not the most knowledgeable about the WCW product, but I can't think of many major storylines they did past that point that were as big and as positive for business as that was. I mean, again, you mentioned like the Macho Man DDP feud. That wasn't like a major league 5-6 month story in the main event. They had done the Sting Hogan stuff had already been done by that point. So I'm trying to think. I can't think of many storylines they did, like major storylines after that were like, wow, like this is a great show. Like after they had Goldberg lose to Kevin Nash, I think the beginning of the end was already in process at Starrcade that year, but that was one of the, not the final nails in the coffin, but one of the first. And then from there, it really just kind of fell apart in 99 and beyond. I interviewed David Arquette recently, and obviously former WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
That's right.
So I was curious, and I know that happened actually 20 years ago this year as well, back in April.
Wow.
So I don't know. I was curious because when I was writing up the article, I wanted to see what date he actually won the championship on. I forgot he won it on Thunder, not Nitro, which is ridiculous. But I look back at the title history of the WCW Championship. They literally had like 21 new WCW champions. That title changed hands like 21 times in 2000, which is unreal. That's like twice a month. Wow. It's ridiculous, dude. So what I was trying to say was that I went back far enough. Literally everyone had at least a month or two run with that championship, dating back to Goldberg. Goldberg, I think, was the longest reigning champion, and he only held it for 5 months, which is a decent amount of time, but it's not like extraordinarily long. People have fucking year-long title reigns every other day this year, like all the time now. Everyone has a year-long title reign. Happens constantly. It's not really that special anymore. Back then, we never really saw that. Long title reigns can help. Sometimes to do them just for the sake of doing them is dumb.
Right.
But I also don't want to see the title change every other month. And WWE was guilty of that too. Stone Cold never had an extraordinarily long title reign, which worked for his character. Daniel Bryan, he had a few. He had like one or two, but by and large, not a long championship reigning person. But WCW was doing it to the point where it was ridiculous how many times that championship changed hands, like every other month on Nitro. And that's just hot shot booking, not really knowing what they're doing. Nothing's working. Let's throw it at the wall and see what sticks. So, yeah, I think I'd have to go back and really see what else they did later on in 98, 99, 2001. By 2000, it was a fucking shit show. But I think late 98 was really when the downhill, when the descent started. But I think that was the peak, though, because it did big numbers. And the match was great. It was an amazing moment. One of the most memorable moments in Nitro history was that day in 98.
I think the beginning of the end was Starrcade. When you see that storyline being played out, and Sting is not performing for a year and a half, and he's just in the rafters, it's just chilling, and you build and you build and you build. And again, that kind of storyline today would not work because the fans don't have the patience for that. They want Sting and Hogan tomorrow, and it's not going to happen. A la like The Rock and Cena. For Mania 28, where they had a year-long build. Can you see that again nowadays? No.
Maybe. If done right, it goes both ways. It's a matter of patience on the fans' part, but it's also a matter of patience on WWE's part as well. Like, they knew Rock and Cena was going to be this major match. That's why they waited. Too often do they fucking give shit away. Because, again, they have so much programming now that it's hard to drag out a story on 2 shows a week with a pay-per-view. We literally had a pay-per-view a week after SummerSlam this year.
Crazy.
That's ridiculous. They would have put the belt on heel Roman a month from now. They put it on when they put him on within a week, which they should have done after that angle they ran on SmackDown last week. But sometimes you can't, and it's not. I feel like that's a WWE problem. Sometimes they do great long-term storytelling. They've done it in NXT before. I haven't seen it in a while on the main roster, and they will sometimes do long-term storytelling with like Mysterio and Rollins, and then they'll do like the eye for an eye shit, which was terrible. AEW is doing it right now. They've done a long-term storyline with Adam Page and Kenny Omega splitting up. They haven't given away the Young Bucks versus FTR yet. They're still waiting on that. So they still do long-term storytelling, but I agree. I think it's a mix. I think it's partially fans' fault for wanting to see things like that, and also partially the company's fault. And when I say partially, I mean largely Vince. Not really. Because NXT does it, AEW does it. Not so much in the main roster, where they're like, all right, we're going to speed this up, and if it's not working, I'm going to give up on it. If Vince was running WCW back then, and maybe I'm wrong, and the Sting thing wasn't getting the reactions he was hoping for, he would have fucking pulled the plug on it within a week. You know what I mean? That's what he does. But yeah, I think it was just a different time back then, and that's why that angle was so great. The match wasn't great between Sting and Hogan, but it was one of the most anticipated pay-per-views of all time because of that build.
Right. I mean, listen, we're 5 years into waiting for Sasha and Bayley, right?
Exactly. But that's not because they said back in 2015, hey, let's wait 5 years, because they were going to do it at many, many different points. They were just like, hey, fuck you, we're not going to do it. That's not, I wouldn't call that, it's long-term storytelling, but it's not because they wanted to. That was just an accident, because that was just purely coincidental because they just didn't book it earlier when they should have, But they are doing it right now, though, with Sasha and Bayley drawing it out, drawing the split. They've done it all year. So, yes, in that respect, it's not completely non-existent. It's just very far and few between these days.
Real quick, as far as moments, we mentioned Goldberg and Hogan. I know we mentioned Macho and DDP. The night that, the Montreal Screwjob and everybody of NWO was in the ring, and they had all the Canadian flags, and they were like trying to recruit Bret Hart to the company in NWO. That was a real surreal moment. Seeing the Four Horsemen come back and have the real life kind of, whatever with Flair and Bischoff and their animosity told each other to go live on TV. That was a big moment. I guess to one of my final points is, like, I always feel like Nitro does not get it gets credit. I don't think it gets enough credit for how McMahon had to change the landscape of his company, and then implementing certain things that Nitro came up with into his company. Does Bischoff get enough credit? I don't think he does. I think more fans who were not watching in that era tend to shit on him a little bit. Not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying that.
They definitely focus on the negatives more, I would say.
They focus on the negative more than what he brought to the table. And I feel like, I want to give Eric his flowers, his credit, his just due to what he brought to the mainstream world of wrestling. So how would you describe Bischoff's overall impact for Nitro, for WCW, what he brought to the table?
Huge. I mean, I don't know without Bischoff that they would have had the success that they did. I mean, it was his ideas. It was his determination, and it could have very well failed. His determination and drive to be better than WWE was what took it to that next level. Like, if that was me, I would be focusing on making my own show better and doing my own thing. But he was like, no, I want to go head-to-head with them, which is good and bad, and ended up backfiring in the end because their creative ideas were shit. And had they not been, maybe they would have won the war. But Bischoff's initial, I mean, again, he is remembered for some bad stuff with what he did and bad business decisions and whatever. But it was his idea to go live, become a 2-hour show, bring in all these people that gave them that success that they did. Right. I think it was better to them to have taken the fight to WWE, beaten them for a while, and ultimately lost. I think that's better than to have not even tried that at all, and then to go down as just we wouldn't even be talking about WCW right now. It's out of business, but it would have gone out of business a lot fucking sooner than it did had they not brought in Eric Bischoff. And like you say, that it doesn't get the credit now that it deserves, which I agree with. I don't even think it would have gotten very minimal credit. It's kind of like the NWA. The NWA had been around for a lot longer than WCW, but that never really took WWE to the limit. You know, I mean, NWA was around longer than WWE, but it was never on the level that the WWE is. Like today, if you ask anyone what's wrestling, they automatically equate it to WWE, not the NWA, not WCW. It's WWE, WWF, whatever. So it would have gone the way of an NWA, where it may have been revived down the road. They had some great moments in the 70s, 80s, and 90s early on, but they would have gone out of business. They would have never, and then maybe WWE would have gone out of business because they were never pushed to that limit that Eric Bischoff took them to. So again, the petty shit was like dumb. I'm not a big fan of that. I hate when WWE does it now. I hate when AEW does it now. I hate when NXT does it now. I fucking hate that shit. And I think we're kind of away from the petty nonsense, which is good for the most part. But it also, in many ways, where we wouldn't be, you know, if it was unsuccessful, we wouldn't be talking about it right now. So as negative as some of that stuff that was, it worked. Some of it worked, and it worked to Nitro's favor. So to their benefit. So yeah, I think Bischoff does not get enough credit. Now, I wouldn't say the same thing, and I know you're a fan. I think you're a fan of his. I don't know if I would say the same thing for Vince Russo. He came in at the tail end of that. I just not a fan of his career. I mean, he came in at 98, and that's when the company took a turn for the worse creatively. I don't think I think he doesn't get enough credit, and he shouldn't, just because a lot of his ideas were shit. I mean, maybe for the WWE stuff, I can see that. For WCW, he had a far more negative impact than positive. Bischoff was far more positive, in my opinion, than negative. But it is crazy, dude. It's crazy that, I mean, honestly, again, I forgot that today was the 25-year anniversary. This is probably the most that anyone's going to be talking about Nitro today. Whereas you go back 2 years ago, Raw celebrated 25 years. You saw video packages for weeks. The 25-year anniversary of Raw. They had this grand old show at the Barclays Center. They brought in Stone Cold. It was this grand celebration of one of the biggest milestones in history. 25 years from Nitro, you don't see almost anyone talking about it. Definitely not WWE. Yeah. They fucking should be. They should be having this like grand, like, even if it's like a marathon, and maybe they are and I'm not aware of it, but like I've heard literally nothing all week about Nitro. It should be like WCW week on the network or something. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not celebrate 25 years of Nitro? They own all the content, so that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't fucking get that, but anyway, yeah, I think it should be talked about far more than it is currently, in my opinion.
Like, I'm looking real quick before I let you go. I'm looking at their Twitter feed. I'm trying to see if they put up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Nothing. I don't see it as of right now. I mean, it's a milestone that should be celebrated. I mean, again, when you're the winner of a war, you can do whatever you want. You can profile this and highlight that, and
exactly. They write the fucking narrative.
You can rewrite history
exactly
as if you dominated Nitro from day one, which wasn't the case.
Yep.
But last point before I let you go. So, what's the overall impact of Nitro? I know there's a lot of things that they did well, that they did not do well, that McMahon still uses today within his format, still from the Nitro days. So what's the overall impact and legacy of Monday Nitro?
I think it's a positive one. I know people like to, shit on WCW, and rightfully so, for some of the ideas they had towards the end there and make fun of it, like, oh, this shit is worse than Nitro in 2000, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, again, you're making fun of it, which again, you should for some of the dumb ideas they did. But without Nitro at the end of the day, and again, I stand by this, I don't think we would have Raw right now. I don't think WWE, if it was around, it definitely would not be as big as it is. And they gave them a lot of top stars. We got Booker T at WCW. Stone Cold started out there. Triple H started out there. Taker started out there very briefly, obviously. And they were there before they well beyond they went out of business, well before that. But still, they brought in Goldberg. We wouldn't be getting these Goldberg title reigns if it wasn't for WCW. They wouldn't be bringing it back as an attraction. That was all Goldberg. That was all WCW. Sting has been with the company for a while now, and that was because of WCW. DDP didn't really have much of an impact in WWE. But he was still, he's a WWE Hall of Famer now. So again, Hogan, same thing. What the fuck would have happened to Hogan? Would he have just faded away? We just wouldn't have heard of him anymore.
Maybe.
Not that I don't want to disrespect the guy, but like Bruno, for example, that was his decision to walk away from wrestling, but he was never really brought back to do stuff. He never really he was huge, and without him, wrestling probably wouldn't even exist today. But it's not like he had this big turning point late in his career where he was continued to be brought back. They kind of tried that with Backlund, the heel turn. It just didn't exactly work. I thought it was cool, but he was a great heel, but it wasn't exactly Hogan level. They tried it with Hogan and it fucking worked. It blew up wrestling. And you still see, dude, to this day, Austin 316 shirts and the NWO shirts. Those would not be around 25 years later had it not been for WCW and Monday Nitro, to be specific. Because if you have the pay-per-views but no weekly television, who cares? Like AEW had that for a while last year where they only had pay-per-views. And I'm like, all right, cool, bro. But like, we need actual momentum here. It feels like they get a big moment when you have a big pay-per-view and then there's no follow-up. You need that immediate follow-up on a Monday or a Tuesday the next week or a Friday or whatever. And we have that now with Raw. They had that with Nitro, and it was smart. So for all the faults, all the faults the company had in many ways over the course of its existence, specifically later on behind the scenes, in front of the camera, there was a lot of good that came out of WCW too. And, they deserve a lot of credit for really braiding that Monday Night War. It wasn't WWE. Why would WWE start a war with a company that wasn't on their level? That was all WCW. They started that war, and not only did they improve and create stars out of it, WWE benefited drastically as well. So I think and that was the last real period, honestly, unless I'm wrong here, that wrestling actually grew. I can't think of another time since the mid-fucking 90s, because of Nitro and because of WCW, that wrestling became bigger than it was, for example, the year before. When have we ever heard reports about Raw getting higher ratings than it did last year? That never fucking happens. The ratings have declined. And unfortunately, AEW is coming around at a time now where it's almost too late. It's almost too late. I don't see AEW growing to have 3 million audience viewers a week, and I would love if they did. But I feel like those days are over because the damage has been done because of all the dumb shit WWE has done over the last 15 years. That doesn't get enough credit. We shit about WCW. We shit on WCW because the ratings went down so quickly in the span of so long. WWE has been drying. They've just been losing blood here for 15 years. It's been pouring out at a very slow rate. But because of that, the company has lost millions of viewers literally within the span of 5 years, let alone 15 years. So if you want to shit on WCW for all the dumb stuff they've done, you got to shit on WWE as well for the state they currently find themselves in ratings-wise.
Absolutely. I think the final point I will make, and you just said it, the viewership back then. Again, I'm a kid. I'm not paying attention to the ratings like that. I'm just watching. But as you get older and the war you have now, you get 800,000 watching NXT. You get 800,000 watching Dynamite. And that's cool. That's great for you. But I'm from the time frame where you had 8 million people watching Raw and Nitro on the same night. 8 million people watching wrestling on a Monday night when there's football and there's basketball and every other sport going on. And every year, 95, 6, 7, 8, it kept going up. 6 million, 7 million, 8 million. 8 million saw the fucking Rock and Mankind This Is Your Life segment, the highest rated segment ever in Raw. 8 million people. So now I can't even get 900,000 to watch NXT. I can't even get 2.3 to watch Raw on every Monday night. It's a different time. It's a different era. I'm just saying, right now is not a war. Back then, it was a war where you're sharing 6, 7, 8 million people on a given night. And then again, no social media. Internet is still early on in the stage. You don't know what's gonna happen on your phone right away. You gotta watch the show. Yeah. Now we know everything before we watch. So it's like, I know it's gonna happen. He'll come back. I'm not watching it.
Or if you missed it, you can just watch it after the fact on YouTube or some shit.
Exactly. So I take my VHS tape, one TV here, take both SmackDown, Thunder, Raw, Nitro. Yeah, I gotta watch it like that. And that was the norm back then, where it was, it was must-see TV more than movies and basketball and football. It was just a crazy time because of the stars too. of the characters too, of the storylines too. And the matches were all right. That comes after. Who's coming on Monday? Stone Cold, The Rock, Taker, Flair, Hogan, NWO. Like, okay, I'm watching it. So when you mention the viewers, different time, man. It was to me the golden era of the sport, where everybody, if my mom knew who Stone Cold was, I mean,
that's how you knew you're doing something right. Yeah, exactly.
And you just don't get that nowadays, and that's the one thing I miss. Where I wish everybody can watch it right now, but they're not. Unfortunately, they're not.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I know, again, you're talking 25 years ago. It's obviously a very different time TV-wise. But, dude, I'm not even talking about that. I mean, you go back 5 years. I mean, TNA was doing 1 million viewers on Spike. AEW and AEW or an NXT would die to get 1 million viewers. I mean, that's not that much more than what they're doing now. But they haven't gotten 1 million viewers since. In a long time, since this war first started a year ago. And yeah, it's a war by 2020 standards, TV ratings wise, I guess. But it ain't nothing compared to what it was. In a way, it is great because the shows have made each other better. It's forced them to put on better shows to kind of, force you to tune in and watch this show over that show, whatever, which is great. Ratings wise, it hasn't really done anyone any favors. I mean, between the 500,000 and million viewer range, it's nothing. You know what I mean? Nothing. That's really, it's nothing. And it's unfortunate compared to what it used to be. And again, it's 25 years ago. Okay, I get it. That was 25 years ago. I'm literally talking about fucking 2015, dude. They were doing 2 million. Like ECW on Sci-Fi would get more than what NXT is doing now. And that show is shit. You know what I mean? It's because the damage has been done. They're like, listen, don't fucking care about our show. And this is all WWE's fault because what other show has been around for the last 10 years that has dominated the wrestling landscape? And TNA doesn't really count. They tried, they failed, whatever. WWE, it was their call to be like, listen, we're going to take what we have and attempt to build on that. They just coasted. And they've coasted for so long that even with a Roman Reigns heel turn, even with a great NXT show, even with a great AEW show, they're not creating new viewers. And what's even worse than that, they're driving their current viewers away because they just don't care, and they could be doing all the best stuff in the world. All it takes sometimes is one dumb decision to drive people away because they've endured so much shit over the last 15, 20 years since the original Monday Night Wars ended. So, yeah, it's crazy. TV is just so much different than it used to be. Yes. And that's obviously a factor, not doubting that. But the decline in viewership is astounding. That does not even get talked about enough. We talk about it. I see on Twitter sometimes. It's honestly, what other TV shows lost literally 2 to 3 million people, 1 million people almost every year? That's ridiculous, dude. It would be, sometimes maybe 10,000s, tens of thousands, 100,000s, maybe. They lose 1 million viewers a year. That is so
and
bad.
Still be on the air.
And without that TV money either, they would be fucked. So they better hope that they maintain whatever 1.5 million viewers they have. And again, I love WWE. I love AEW. I want to see them succeed. But it is also very sad to see how far they've fallen viewership-wise. And people can say the ratings don't matter. Listen, I don't put too much stock in the ratings just because there's nothing I can really do to change that. I tune in every week. I do my part. I'm not going to put on fucking 25 TVs in my house like that would even make a difference anyway.
Right.
But it's true. I mean, the shit, it does matter because if the ratings, they weren't doing anyone. If no one tuned into the show, USA is like, yeah, we're pulling the plug on this shit. We don't give a fuck about you. Why do you think shows live and die by ratings? That's why they're canceled or why they live on, why they're renewed. It's because of the ratings. They don't care about the feedback that people give it on social media. If there's enough viewership and the demand is there viewership-wise, they'll do it again. WWE's gotten away for so long and being a weekly show and having that core 2 million base, that's eroding. And that's terrible. So if they find another show that's bigger than WWE, which is very possible at some point, then they're just going to get rid of it. So, I mean, NXT is probably doing far better than any other show currently on USA. They just don't have any great shows anymore. But it may get to a point where they're doing 500,000. They want to pull the plug because it's just not working. So it sucks to see. But that's the current state of the wrestling landscape, and it dates all the way back to the Monday Night Wars 25 years ago.
Real quick before I let you go, I'm actually looking at the ratings between Raw and Nitro during the war.
Oh, no.
I'm trying to find the highest Nitro and the highest Raw rating. So you want to guess the highest Nitro rating they had?
What was it?
A 6.
So what does that come out to?
I thought it was 6 million people watching this shit. I don't know. Probably more. Well, on the same night, there was no Raw, so they were unopposed.
So that's the thing. Like, I never really understood that. I don't really know. The number doesn't come out to how many millions of viewers. It's different. Like, a 0.1 is. I don't know how it works exactly. I'm not really sure.
Right.
That's a lot, though. I'll just tell you that much. I think it's like over maybe 7 million people. I don't know, but
I would say so too. Just around that.
Yeah. When was that though? 98.
August 31st, 1998.
Holy shit! Yeah. So that was the peak. Then I would say.
So that would have been the night after SummerSlam '98.
Yeah, why wouldn't they have been on the air that night? That's weird.
I have no idea. They were off the air 2 weeks in a row, which I have no idea why.
Well, now is currently NHL playoff season, and maybe it was a football thing, or maybe it was the Westminster Dog Show, which is usually earlier on in the year, so maybe not. Maybe it was the U.S. Open. They used to air that on the network.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
And the highest Raw. Wow. Okay, I got one so far. I'm trying to see if that gets beaten somehow. So yeah. Oh, I'm in 2000 now. Wow. So I got at the moment, I got a 7.4. May 1st, 2000. While Nitro had a 2.5.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I think 7.4 was the highest for a Monday Night Raw.
And when was that again?
May 1st, 2000.
Wow.
Crazy.
You would think it'd be like, I thought it would be like 01 or something, but still a lot.
AEW and NXT would fucking kill for 7.4.
They would literally murder somebody. And I looked it up just now just because I was curious. There was no episode of Raw in August 31st, August 30th, whatever. There was nothing. It just goes, and I'm looking at Wikipedia, maybe it's wrong, but it goes from August 24th to September 5th. They literally skipped a week.
Yeah.
The fuck? Like, usually they go on like a Tuesday or something. What the fuck happened?
And that's why Nitro bumped up to 5.5 and 6 because there was no Raw unopposed.
That's weird. Why wouldn't they have just gone to a different time or a different day or a different network? They do that shit all the time. So basically that tells me I could have sworn that Raw's had an episode every week for the last 25 years. That is not true. Because that week it doesn't show there's an episode at all.
Mm-hmm.
So unless there was a Tuesday Night Raw and they didn't include it here in the Wikipedia results, maybe. I don't think there was a show that week at all. Like, period. So it's not episode. It's not weekly anymore. They missed a week, and I don't think that's ever happened before, unless I'm mistaken.
Oh, so they've been lying to us.
They've been fucking lying to us.
They're fucking lying to us.
And that September 5th show, of course, took place in the New Haven Coliseum here in Connecticut. So that's probably why the rating was shit.
Oh, no wonder. Yeah, they can't go back to Connecticut, man. They can't do that.
Jeff Jarrett versus Scorpio was the main event, while Edge versus Mark Marrow took place in the mid card, along with the Oddities versus Drozdov and Road Warrior Animal.
I'm sorry. Raw, May 10th, 1999, 8.1.
Okay, so it would have been right after WrestleMania 15. Cool.
Yeah, there was no Nitro, but still, Raw 8.1. 8.1.
Jeez, it's probably like 9 million or 8.5 million or some shit like that.
That's a lot of people, bro.
That's a lot of fucking
people. Graham Matthews, always a pleasure, man. You can find him on Twitter at WrestleRants. Great work for both Bleacher Report and FanSided DDT. You can follow me on Twitter at Randy J. Cruz, RENDY, the letter JCRUZ. You can find the podcast on the Cruise Control Podcast Network on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the full video version on Cruise Control Podcast Network on YouTube. Graham, my man, always appreciate it.
Thank you, Randy. Great time as always. I'll talk to you next time.
All right, man. Take it easy.
You too. Adios.
All right.